All right, Alexander, let's talk about the elections in Finland and on the latest victim of the Zelensky curse, which is Prime Minister Sanna Marin. She did not win the elections. Her party did not win the elections. The party that did win and will form a coalition is the Conservative Party, and it's going to form a conservative coalition in Finland. So it looks like we have another WEF, Collective West leader who has now been taken out by the Zelensky curse. Not that the new government in Finland, from what I understand, will be any different from a foreign policy perspective. From what I understand, it's very pro NATO, pro Ukraine, anti Russian. So I don't expect foreign policy changes. But the message is that Sanna Marin and the influence that the WEF apparently exerted on Prime Minister Marin and her, and I guess you could say her unwavering support for Ukraine and Zelensky did result in her election defeat, and we now have a conservative coalition most likely forming in Finland. This does remind me of Italy, I have to say, and the Brothers Party in Malone.
That's It's exactly the same. Can I just say? I mean, this is directly the result of the Zelensky curse. First of all, she was one of the enthusiastic supporters of Finland's NATO membership. She's been an enthusiastic supporter of Ukraine. She's been an enthusiastic supporter of the sanctions. Now, as you correctly say, no one of significance in Finland's political class any longer sticks by Finland's historic policy of neutrality and friendship with Russia, which, was what enabled Finland to reconstruct itself after the Second World War and to become the prosperous country that in the last couple of decades it's been. But anyway, nobody upholds that policy of any significance anymore. But Marin going against it, what has it done? It's caused economic problems in Finland. It's caused higher prices in Finland. It's caused inflation. It's caused lower living standards. Who do people start to blame? When living standards are falling, they blame the government that is in office at the time. And I suspect, I would not be surprised if at a certain level, there might even be some left of centre or even more left-wing voters in Finland who, but this is because she leads the Social Democratic Party of Finland, which was once one of those parties that perhaps would have supported Finnish neutrality. They're not happy about what has happened, and maybe they've stayed away and not voted in this election. Note that she's gone. Her party has fallen to third place. I mean, it's not a good result. And, for the moment, as you said, the Zelensky curse is spreading. I mean, Macron's in crisis in France. Germany looks shaky. Italy, it's fallen. Boris has gone. Boris Johnson in Britain has gone. Spain looks shaky as well. They had Truss has gone. As I said, one after another, they're all being picked off. And Marin, it seems to me, is just the last, the last in the sequence, but not the last that it's eventually going to catch up with.
Yeah, but she'll get placed into a different position somewhere in one of the globalist institutions. That's for sure. We have Ursula von der Leyen, who's now, it's openly being discussed that she's now the front runner for the NATO position. That's interesting. She's wrecked the European Union, so now I guess she can finish off NATO as well. Not that NATO is doing so well under Stoltenberg, but Ursula will finish off the annihilation of NATO. Everything she touches completely collapses. That would be a big victim of the Zelensky curse. We've had Italy's Draghi. That was a big victim. Petkov in Bulgaria. I mean, there's been all kinds of victims from the Zelensky curse. It really does remind me of the Assad must go um, statements that we were getting from Obama and Merkel and all these people. And Assad is still there. He's going to be going to the Arab summit in Riyadh, rapprochement with Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia, soon to have a rapprochement with Turkey. And everyone that was screaming Assad must go, well, they've all left. It's, this is what all of this reminds me of.
Ursula is a very interesting case, actually, because there were sort of stories floating around a couple of months ago that her commission, is due to complete its term next year, but that she was actually looking to stay as commission president. In other words, that she was wanting to be re-elected, and this is not by any means unprecedented. I mean, I remember Jacques Delors, for example, way back in the 80s and early 90s, I think, he got re-elected by the European states as European Commission president. So it would not have been an unprecedented thing to do. But clearly, she's come to realise that isn't going to happen. And she's not going to be re-elected European Commission president. So she wants a job. And so what does she want? She wants the job of NATO Secretary General. So on the one hand, she's not wanted anymore at the EU. So the Zelensky curse bites her. So she's not able to stay in the job that she has now. So at the same time, she has been a catastrophic failure. She was a catastrophic failure as president of the European Commission. European living standards are falling faster than they have ever done, apparently, in the entire existence of the Union and the European community. So she's been a disaster there. She was a disaster as German defense minister. That's almost universally acknowledged. So what do you do when you have somebody who has failed completely? Well, it's very simple. If you're part of the globalist system, you promote them. You give them another job. You put them even higher up. That's how you rise nowadays. You fail. She failed as defense minister, so you put her in charge of NATO. She failed as at the European Commission in Brussels, so you give her an even more important position in Brussels. As I said, failure is the passport to success, or so it seems. I mean, the other person, by the way, who apparently is been in kind of a way bitten by the Zelensky curse is Chrystia Freeland of Canada. Because if you remember, she was the front runner for a while, but it now seems that the US, for some reason, has turned against her and doesn't want her.
Yeah. Boris wanted that job as well. I mean, he wants that
absolutely.
job
Well,
of NATO.
He still does.
Yeah.
But he's not going to get it either. I mean, and he's. By the way, just to say, he failed disastrously in a recent parliamentary inquiry sitting that took place.
Yeah. Okay. So Boris is out. Chrystia Freeland, who she would have been a nice fit for a NATO Secretary General, given what we know about Chrystia Freeland. It looks like she's lost favor with the powers that be. So it does really come down to Ursula. I mean, there was talk about Kaja Kallas of Estonia, but she won her re-election in Estonia. So yeah, it's the field is clear for Ursula to get that job.
It's absolutely, and who's going to be the next president of the European Commission? My money is on that financial genius, the head of the president of the European Central Bank, former president of the International Monetary Fund, former finance minister of France, Christine Lagarde. I mean, she has failed in every one of these jobs as well. So, of course, she stands in need for a promotion. So, president of the Commission beckons, I'm sure.
Do you think, my God, do you think that would open the way for Merkel to move into a position at the ECB or somewhere? Do you think Merkel is she's out. She's tapped out.
I think she's for the moment down because, as I said, there's still a lot of grumbles about her, and I think the British, for one, would not be happy to see her, say, go to the IMF, and I don't think the Americans would either, because, as I said, she's seen as having been a bit too close to Putin. But don't worry too much about Merkel. Sooner or later, they'll find a job for her as well. Of that, there's absolutely no doubt. But as I said, I mean, it's interesting about how, the Ursula business is really interesting because I think she's most likely will be the next NATO Secretary General. The very fact that she's even thinking about it suggests that she's been prompted to think about it as well. And as I said, in some ways, she's the perfect fit. As I said, she ruined the German military, so that makes her ideal for the post. I mean, who could you think who would be better?
Yeah. Final thoughts on your final thoughts on Erdogan, on Turkey approving Finland's entry into NATO. Sweden is still a question mark, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that in the end, Erdogan would go along with it, and I think he's under a lot of pressure at the moment because he's got a very difficult election in May. He's seeing the US. They're clearly out to get him. The US ambassador has just had a meeting with Turkish opposition leaders. So he wants, to the extent that he can, to try and hold things together, to give the appearance that, yes, he's still a loyal NATO ally. So he went along with the Finland decision. I always thought he would in the end.
Yeah. He hasn't gone along with the Sweden decision yet.
No, he hasn't gone along with the Sweden, but I think in Turkey perhaps that plays quite well in some ways because Sweden is I think a more unpopular country in Turkey than Finland is, so that he will continue to play with through the election, but by letting Finland in, he's able to come out and say, well, look, it's not that I'm against countries joining NATO. I'm not disloyal to NATO. It's just that Sweden has crossed too many of our red lines, and that's why we have to say no for the time being.
Yeah. All right. A final thought is that these leaders that are falling to the Zelensky curse. It also shows that the WEF is definitely losing sway in a lot of the countries where they had their young leaders and their students in as prime ministers. Even though you are getting prime ministers who are still very hawkish, are still warmongers, are still aligning with much of the foreign policy initiatives of the WEF, but they're not part of that WEF young leaders group. So you are seeing this class of young leaders be escorted out. Once again, not that it's changing the foreign policy trajectory of Europe, but I guess it's a small step in the right direction. Maybe
it is a small, yeah. I mean, they are such a completely unconvincing group of people to lead countries. I think they're just too unconvincing at the end of the day. I mean, Marin, for me, I gather she's still popular in Finland with lots of people in Finland. But, I think popular in a kind of way. I don't think many people in Finland felt that she was really the right person to be Prime Minister of Finland. They may have liked her. I'm not sure why, but, maybe she's got qualities that are invisible to me. But at the end of the day, she didn't come across to many people in Finland as the right person to lead the country. And I think that is probably how a lot of people feel about all of these WF people. They're too cartoon-like, in my opinion. They do identikit. They don't really seem to me like real politicians. Because, of course, they're not real politicians. They're just place people. And they're not convincing in these jobs that they do.
Yeah, they're cookie cutter. Macron, Jacinda Ardern, Trudeau, Sanna Marin, Petkov. They're all they're just clones of each other. It's really bizarre. Exactly, yeah. It's like they were put
Yeah.
put into a machine or something, and they just clone them out anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. We'll leave it there. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rockfin, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and Telegram. And go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.